Huh. Hello, Think Twice radio audience. I'm Metachewy, and this is the Muckraker Punk podcast. So thank you for tuning in. This week's episode, we're going to cover the EPA's particulate matter ruling, and then we're going to do a little audit work into Taro Tsujimoto, historic and hoax Buffalo Sabres figure. And then we're in the theme of Valentine's Day, we're going to do a Grateful Dead audit into Peggy-O. It's kind of the Grateful Dead song that aligns with the Valentine's Day theme. Then I'm also going to get into the Eastside Parkway's town hall that occurred on Friday that I had mentioned briefly on my show last week. So that's kind of what we're going to cover in this show and in our hour. So hopefully we can get through everything. So let's start first with the EPA's ruling. So on Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, the Environmental Protection Agency, they came out and modified their particulate matter regulations. So we're going to dive in a little into that ruling. So the reason that matters is I've been following the Eastside Parkway's plan and the state Department of Transportation's plan to build a 4,100 foot cover on the Kensington Highway here in Buffalo. And particulate matter is something that the engineering team for the Department of Transportation studied, especially PM 2.5. So in order to kind of understand the repercussions of that plan, I think it's important to know particulate matter. So I'll tie it in together. But let's hop into the EPA's site first. So this is the EPA's web page that they have. Let's see. I'll try to zoom in so we can see the whole thing. So yeah, this is the EPA's particulate matter pollution. So again, as I mentioned on February 7th, 2024, the EPA, they strengthened the national ambient air quality standards for particulate matter to protect millions of Americans from harmful and costly health impacts such as heart attacks and premature death. Particles or soot pollution is one of the most dangerous forms of air pollution. And an extensive body of science links it to a range of serious and sometimes deadly illnesses. So the EPA is setting the level of the primary, so the health-based annual PM 2.5 standard at 9.0 micrograms per cubic meter to provide public health protection. So you might be asking, what's 2.5? That's a bunch of jargon. So let's go to the particulate matter basics. Let's see if I can zoom in on this picture, because this is a good, there we go. So 2.5 particulate matter. So over here, this PM 2.5 in technical jargon. So it's a very fine, very small particles. So this, for example, so you might hear 2.5. This is a human hair. So human hair is 50 to 70 PM or particulate or microns. So we have some things here like fine beach sand, which is 90, and then dust and palm, which is 10. So really this ruling concerns this 2.5. So 2.5, microns is extremely small. So this is a human hair right here, or a model of a human hair. You can see these little red dots. That is particulate matter at 2.5. So extremely, extremely small bits of pollution, which they call PM 2.5. So yeah, hair would be PM 50 or PM 70. So again, extremely small. I mean, you can see this is a grain of beach sand, and look how small, relatively the PM 2.5 is. So why does this matter? I guess it matters because PM 2.5 is extremely hard. So it's bad for, human beings. It's a bad pollution. So you'll often hear PM 10, which is inhalable particles with diameters that are, 10 micrometers. So kind of these blue ones they're small, but not as small as the 2.5. So so how small is 2.5 micrometers? So 2.5 micrometers, it's extremely small. So 30 times larger. Let's see. So the average human hair is 30 times larger than a 2.5 PM. Let's see if I can get my my wheel going here. So what are the harmful effects? So particulate matter, it contains microscopic solids and liquid droplets that are so small that they can be inhaled and cause serious health problems. So these particles, can get deep into your lungs, and they pose a great health or great deal of harm to human health. So essentially the EPA, they came out this week. This ruling, they're just lowering the threshold. So it was like 12 parts per, so basically 12 to 9. I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain really the technical of what that means, but essentially they're just lowering the standard of what's healthy. So 12 used to be considered the threshold, and they're lowering it to 9. So health and environmental effects. So the PM, it's important because it causes lots of health issues for human beings. So if you inhale a lot of it, or if you have escalated levels of PM 2.5, you can have things like premature death, heart and lung disease, heart attacks. It's bad for asthma, decreased lung function, and also like visibility impairment. So I think whenever we see kind of I think we've all seen the pictures of China, the air pollution in China, how bad it is. And, it causes fog and, visibility impairment, environmental damage. So it's not just humans that it's bad for. Everything from our water to our air, to the nutrients in our soil. So it damages our forest crops and forests, and it's bad for ecosystem. It contributes to acid rain. So there's lots of good resources on the EPA. So I just wanted to bring this to people's attention because essentially the state's DOT study, when they were studying kind of the effects of the Kensington cap, they used 12 as a threshold, and now lowering it to 9, it decreases the margin of error and just how close this $1 billion project is. I think some of the tables, and I can pull up a table that was in the report. Let's see if I can find it here. So let's see here. Let's see. So here's the table from the consultant study. Let's see if I can zoom in here. So this is table 18 and table 19 from the consultant study. So this looked at the build alternative. So this is the 2027 if they build, the Kensington cap. So they used this 2.5 PM results, and they had the national ambient air quality standard. It was 12. So now, I crossed it out and put a 9 because now the 9 is. But you can see from their study that like they calculated that if they build the Kensington, the effects of the build will be at 7.5. So now we're only 1.5 away from the 9 threshold. I did some digging into the 6.8 number, and I have some questions of essentially what they did is there's a air monitoring station on the 190, I think, by Clinton. It essentially monitors Buffalo's air quality. So they come up with like the yearly averages, and on May 1st, they'll release the 2023 numbers. But essentially what the consultants did is they took the 3-year average from just the Clinton Street station and got 6.8 as the average. I went back and pulled the station readings all the way back. They have data all the way to 1999. And if you use like a 5-year average or a 9-year average, that number's higher. So when I was looking at the trend line, the 6.8 number, I have some questions. It uses 2020 when obviously with the pandemic and COVID, there's a lot less driving. So car and car exhaust is a big contributor of this PM 2.5. So even the 2020 number was low. So when they use this 3-year average to get this 6.8 number, so essentially they modeled that 0.7 would be from the tunnel, and then the background, or basically our base level of 2.5 particulate matter in Buffalo is, according to these consultants, 6.8. And this number, I have some questions of, it seems artificially low. My calculation is it may be somewhere around 7.2. Based on like a 5-year average, if you looked at that, and also looking at the Cheektowaga monitoring station. So we could be somewhere up around 8. This is just an average. So some days were higher, some days were lower. So now with the EPA making the standard 9, it decreases our it just makes it thinner, the margin of error, and we're closer to just being, more polluted or what's healthy. And I think, even looking at the monitoring station data, you look back in 2005 and our average was like 14. So we have made some decreases or improvements in our air quality, but still, this number should be 0. So I think just based on our modern lifestyle of, fossil fuels and all the types of pollution that, go into the air, this 2.5 is just something we all deal with. So we're all breathing in these really small and fine particles, and just something to be, aware of for just in general, because I think this is so that was the EPA studies. Let me see if there's anything else really that I wanted to cover. Hold on a second while I pull up some more data. So yeah, I wanted to bring up this topic because on Friday, and I had mentioned on my last podcast that there was a town hall hosted by the East Side Parkways Coalition. So let's see. So yeah, on Friday, there was this East Side Parkways Coalition. They held a town hall for the Kensington Cap at the Jefferson Memorial or Frank Merriweather Library on Jefferson and East Utica. So here's a picture from the event. Essentially, it just consisted of a presentation put on by the East Side Parkways and then a public forum for question and answers. So this was a post made by the Challenger News. So it reads, you had a great turnout for the town hall regarding the 33 project. So Crystal People-Stokes, who's pictured here, she is the New York State Assembly majority leader, and she represents, parts of the city of Buffalo. So she did attend. So, while it was appreciated that she accepted the invitation to attend, it took her busy time. I have to agree with this post of being dismayed at her disrespectful behavior. So she kept her head turned away from the presentation the whole time. She spoke for a few moments afterwards, and then she left before answering any questions and answering any comments. Essentially, she said that the Eastside Parkways has done a lot of work since October, but more people did work for the past 15 years. So she kind of got up at the end of the presentation and basically just lectured the whole, and the audience was standing room only. So there was, I had to guess at least, over 100 people for sure. It was a packed, and she said, I was here 15 years ago. None of you people were here. Where have you been 15 years ago? So it's essentially just because she invalidated all of our presence there at that moment in time. And me 15 years ago, I was, just graduating from high school. So I'm sorry that I wasn't involved with the Humboldt Parkway. But it was just, I think for me, and we had a couple other elected officials. So we had Zanetta Everhart and Leah Halton Pope, who are the new council people. They made an appearance. You were a county legislator, I think Howard Johnson. And then you had a representative from State Senator Tim Kennedy. And the rep from Tim Kennedy, he stayed throughout the whole presentation. But Leah Halton Pope and Zanetta Everhart, they basically just showed their faces during the presentation, left halfway through, basically just got acknowledged and left. Didn't stay for the questions and answers. But I thought it was a really good presentation, and it was kind of concerning that Crystal People-Stokes didn't even really stick around to listen to even the counter arguments. There's a lot of concerns people have, and it just feels like, as a Buffalo resident and as people in the library, it just felt like we're being dictated to by the New York State Department of Transit and the New York State Assembly. So basically her attitude was, this is the project, we're moving ahead, you're free to do whatever you want, but you weren't here 15 years ago. So since you weren't here 15 years ago, your opinion is invalidated and your concerns aren't, we don't really care about you. So there has been a group, they call them ROC, the Restore Our Community Coalition, and they have been involved for 15 plus years, and they were kind of the original OGs on trying to get the Kensington Expressway covered up. So a lot of those people, are either elderly or have unfortunately passed away. So I do feel like the ESP, the East Side Parkways, I mean, we stand on the shoulder of giants, and we wouldn't be where we are as a community with, this investment and having a cover up if it wasn't for the work and due diligence and commitment that people did 15 years ago and have been doing, for a long time. But at the same time, I think that there's a new generation of just people in the city of Buffalo that are concerned about this project. And I think the presenter, and you see him here, his name's Kevin. He's a 17-year-old high school student from one of the local high schools. He was one of the main presenters for this PowerPoint, and he kind of shot back at the assembly leader and said, 15 years ago, I was 2 years old. So I have to give him props that a high school senior wasn't taking anything from the New York State Assembly leader. And it's true. I think you can't invalidate. I mean, we're here now, and we have concerns about this project, especially the PM 2.5 that I referenced. The consultant's own study has shown that at the either ends of the portal, so the East Side Parkways and the Kensington Cap goes from Sydney Street to Best Street by the Science Library, so 4,100 feet. And the study shows that at either end of the portal, the north portal and the south portal at the ends of the tunnel, that concentrations of PM 2.5 will be increased and be concentrated at those areas. So Crystal People-Stokes, she said, nobody's going to lose their home. And I mean, no one's home, yes, is being demolished, but I think the people who own properties and homes at either end of those portals, their resale values, the assessed value of their house is not helped by this project. I don't think anyone wants cancer or a heart attack or health issues, so I don't know who would be interested in buying a house right at a tunnel that's spewing out, PM 2.5 at elevated rates. Especially when you consider Humboldt Parkway and all those older homes, there's going to be drilling and explosions, and it's going to be a lot of wear and tear. You can't tell me that, the plumes of pollution that are going up in the air as they're, demolishing and crushing stone and digging to the ground isn't going to shake the foundations of the old homes. So yeah, that was Friday. It was a good group, and I think it was pretty powerful. There was about 200 people there, and everybody that was there was pretty committed and anti against the highway. So that was, so that's the ESP and I think the 2.5. So hopefully that helps get people a little informed on the project. So now I want to dive in to rebuttal Crystal People-Stokes in her comment that you weren't 15 years ago. I'm going to kind of shoot back that Crystal People-Stokes wasn't there. Where was she, in 1949 when they built the tunnel? She was born, I think, in 51. So where was she in the 50s when they were building the tunnel? Why wasn't she fighting for us when she was 2 years old, like Kevin should have been? So I've been doing some digging. I've been going back to the microfilms at the Erie County Library to do some research just on the building of the Kensington and the Humboldt Expressway. So I'm going to run through some of the microfilms that I found. So this is from 1949, but the earliest reference I could find to any sort of, let's see if I can rotate this. So this is October 4th, 1935. So this is the first kind of appearance of any sort of discussion of the Humboldt. So it says an underpass at the Humboldt to be discussed. So objections of residents lead to belief proposal will be voted down by the council. So this was 1935, where this was the first appearance of the Humboldt. So there was a discussion for underpass at the Humboldt. So I think their first iteration was they were going to build an underpass at Main and Humboldt. So 1935 people were against it. So the next article I found was also from 1935. So it says the council group rejects a plan for the underpass. So the main Humboldt Tunnel project, it met a lot of opposition from neighborhood and property owners. So meeting organized opposition of property owners of the neighborhood. The legislation committee of the Common Council yesterday, so 1935, turned down a proposal to construct an east-west traffic underpass at Main Street and Humboldt Parkway. The proposal included in the list of work relief projects advanced several months ago was rejected when the committee, by unanimous vote, ordered all actions rescinded. So in 1935, the project was, shot down by this council group. And then the next time it kind of made, this was from March 1949. So the next appearance was then again another 14 or 15 years later, 1949. So this is, again, a throughway plan for the Humboldt section. So perils, inconvenience cited by taxpayers. So the Maine Humboldt Taxpayers Association yesterday expressed deep concern over the effects the proposed throughway would have in that section of the city. In a letter to the Common Council, this association said, "We are deeply concerned by the published report that the state has plans prepared to construct the two bridges at Maine and Humboldt, making a 6-lane traffic throughway of the center of Humboldt and lowering the parkway so as to tunnel under the bridges." So the letter was signed by Eugene M. Downey, who is the president of the association. He pointed out that construction will take 2 years, during which time traffic will be rerouted, resulting in safety hazards and other dangers and inconveniences in a highly residential neighborhood. So the association also objected to the removal of a substantial part of the land and trees between the present center portion of the highway and the extension of the throughway through Delaware Park, through the Delaware Park Meadow. So a state throughway, or any part of one, it seems to us, should not plow through the center of the city's most beautiful and valuable residential area. So you can see resistance to the Humboldt goes back to 1949. So even before they started building, people were speaking out. And this guy, this Eugene M. Downey, who is the president, and he's a dentist that he appears in later, but he was kind of the leader at this time of the neighborhood opposing the building of the projects. So fast forward a month later to April 27th, 1949. So it appears again, this hearing set on the Humboldt tunnel plan. So let's see if I can zoom in. So the public session, so this May 24th, 1949 was the Common Council's Legislation Committee. So the Legislation Committee of the Common Council yesterday voted to hold a public hearing on May 24th on the State Department of Public Works' decision to erect a tunnel and overhead bridge at Maine and Humboldt. The action was taken despite pleas from the Maine Humboldt Taxpayers Association that the committee go on the record as opposing the project. William Smith, president of the association, said that the residents of the area are opposed to the plan because it would result in depreciation of properties. So again, as we can talk about, I think in the current version of this tunnel, we're going to see depreciation of the properties, especially at the either end of the tunnel with the increased particulate matter. So they set this hearing in April 27th. So let's see the next article that I find. So this dentist, so again, this normal person, just a dentist, he fights the state's plans for the underpass. So maybe I misspoke earlier. So this William Potter is the dentist, but the state's plan to build an underpass at Maine and Humboldt and convert Humboldt Parkway from a 6 to 8 lane route will be more harmful than beneficial, a Buffalo dentist charged last night at a meeting of the Buffalo Business Federation at the Hotel Statler. So William E. Potter of 148 West Humboldt Parkway said the blasting of thousands of yards of rock will be an unbearable distraction to patients at Sisters Hospital. The elimination of the island of trees in Humboldt Parkway will destroy its beauty, and the increased traffic will impair the recreational value of the southern section of Delaware Park. There is nothing sacred about this plan, Dr. Potter said. Humboldt Parkway and Delaware Park are two of the most beautiful sections of the city. Why can't they be left that way? Dr. Potter charges followed a progress report on the state thruway and the arterial improvement program for Buffalo by Elmer G.H. Youngman, Assistant Director of Engineering at the State Department of Public Works. So this is another article from 1949. So May 15th, so about 10 days before the hearing. So loss of state aid feared if underpass is rejected. So blocking of Maine Humboldt project would divert funds to Gotham, planners feel. So this is the exact same playbook that they're using now. So I know that state officials have kind of put fear out in the air that if we don't build this tunnel now, all this money that the city got is going to go to New York State, or it's not going to go here, which is false. So I think the federal money, I think the feds gave around $50 million. That money I think could go away, but the state's like $1 billion investment, or some of the majority of the state aid has to go to has to stay in Buffalo. And the thing is, the Humboldt Parkway is at the end of its useful life, so it needs to be repaired either way. So it's kind of the same fear mongering that they were doing back in 1949. So it says Buffalo could lose most of the proposed state-financed arterial highway system if the main Humboldt underpass is blocked. This fear was expressed yesterday by members of the City Planning Commission and officials of the State Department of Public Works. So yeah, just kind of the same thing. It's just funny when you go back and read how it's the same stuff that they're doing now. Of same fears, kind of same state versus residents that don't want it. And then here's a sketch from the Buffalo News. So this was a sketch of the controversial project to ease traffic congestion. So that's like a rendering. This is a newspaper clip. We've come quite a ways in our renderings of it, but this was a picture that I found in the underpass. And I think you'll recognize this. Anyone that's been on Main Street in Buffalo turning on that, there's that really weird, bizarre area where I can't believe it's a thing where you have to turn. It's just a mess. I think this is the area that they redid because it's just a disaster over there. And then, of course, you had the employment groups coming to back the project like they always do. We have the Buffalo-Niagara Partnership here in Buffalo that kind of is just, they're just the business people, and I don't know, they are kind of detached from reality, in my opinion. But the employment group backs the Humboldt job. So the Civic Full Employment Committee yesterday sent on record in support of the state's $1.2 million project. Again, $1.2 million. So this project now is going to be projected at $1 billion. So inflation is a real thing, and it's really, really a thing when you look back even longer, 1949. The fact that we could build an underpass with $1.2 million, I don't even think $1.2 million would cover the insurance for a handful of people to even get on the job. So they pointed out that the construction of the underpass would provide a year's employment for 100 workers. So again, they always use these small numbers. 100 jobs for a year, this is worth, 50 years or 60 years of the legacy. So they advised that residents of the section were generally opposed to the project, but they approved it. And the business community kind of came to back the to back the project. So this is May 20th. So this is a couple days before that May 24th meeting. So the main Humboldt Taxpayers Association, they met at 8 o'clock at a church to outline final plans in its fight against making Humboldt Parkway a part of the state's arterial highway system. So the president, or the director of the association, he wants to acquaint people with all facts in the situation before its officers and members appear May 24th before the Common Council's public hearing on the project. So very similar to the town hall that we had of just, residents organizing to kind of help inform people. Because that's, I think, one of the things that's been striking to me is just how uninformed or how little, the public actually knows about this project. A lot of people know kind of generally it's happening, but they don't really know the ins and outs of the project. So this is 3 days before the council meeting. So again, the state planned for a $2 million underpass. So 1.2, 2 million. It's, in the $1949, $2 million was a lot. But this is Claudia Sales State's plan for underpass at Main Street before taxpayers meeting. So the plan ran into a major stumbling block last night with a taxpayer group forming a solid front to prevent it. And the Democratic councilman was asserting that the city might not sanction it. So this was a council president who was essentially siding with the people and encouraging the opposition, which is something the Common Council doesn't do now. They don't ever side with the people. They are always opposed to the people's wills. And you would never see, and that's been one thing is like, this is all leading up to a meeting at the Common Council. The Common Council has not discussed or will not talk about this in their chambers at all because because it's, the state's purview. Even though they're the City of Buffalo Common Council, you won't hear any of the council members talk about this project, even the council members who it's in their own district. So it's a couple more articles. This is just the same article, the long. So here's a front page. You can see the opposition imperils the Humboldt job. So they had, there was just a good amount of people opposing this project. And I think one of the fun things about seeing the old microfilms is just you see things like this, like communist says Reds will go underground. So yeah, just some of the fun things you see in headlines. You can kind of get a sense of what was going on there. It's crazy. They're talking about the Soviet Union, and Ukraine's an issue now. So it's just funny how certain things don't change. So then here is more than 4,000 voiced their opposition. So City Hall deluged with protests from churches, hospitals, clubs, and individuals. So climaxing civic opposition unmatched in recent years. More than 4,000 property owners and residents of the main Humboldt area will try to deliver the coup de grace today at the state's plan for a $2 million underpass at the intersection. So indications were, however, that the final blow may come from the Common Council itself. At a meeting last week, the council president expressed dissatisfaction with the project, and reports are that other legislators feel likewise. So the city clerk announced that a recipient of petitions bearing the names of 3,550 persons were at the close of business. It was estimated that between 4,000 and 5,000 signatures had registered their dissatisfaction. So, lots of people were opposed to the building of the highway in the first place. And then this is from the day of the meeting. So it says, foes gird to kill main Humboldt underpass today. So more than 4,000 voice opposition, which is the article I read. So just another day from the day of the legislation meeting. And then the day of the meeting, so the 25th. So charges fly at hearing in City Hall. So foes of Humboldt Tunnel are accused of horse and buggy attitude on changes. So charges of horse and buggy thinking and muddled state planning were exchanged freely yesterday during a public hearing on the proposed main Humboldt underpass. Both sides fired their heaviest guns during the 90-minute session, which ended with the Common Council Legislation Committee voting unanimously to table the proposal. So I think this horse and buggy thinking versus muddled state planning. The muddled state planning is definitely still a thing, because that's kind of what we're facing, is just a bunch of state planners and politicians that are, I guess, muddled. Muddle is a polite way to say what they are. And then this horse and buggy thinking. You have people today that want to get rid of cars and return to a natural parkway, which at the time, these horse and buggy people were thought to be in the way of progress. Because I think at the time the automobile was just seen as, it was the future and it was here to stay, and we need to build our cities for cars, and horse and buggies aren't coming back. Also at this time, 1949, Buffalo's population was, it was very high, and it was projected to, continue to exponentially increase, which really didn't end up happening. So even this infrastructure was built for cars and traffic that, never ended up coming to fruition. Let's see. So this was the day of the 25th. The next day, so the charges fly, and again, Reds march into heart of Shanghai was the headline in the newspaper. And here's a picture of this rubber mask. So this guy, I guess, robbed a bank and was wearing this rubber mask, and then it sounded like he got caught and he had this rubber mask in his bag on it. So not the smartest criminal, but I think that's just a funny picture. These are all microfilms from the city's central library. So here's pictures from that day. So here's the council chambers packed. You just don't see things like this today. I think there's literally no attendance at the Common Council meetings, because the Common Council doesn't want people paying attention. So just a really incredible shot of just the chambers packed, and our city was having a lively debate on the future of our city, and just something that's not around anymore. Because so here's kind of the people that were running our city. So neighborhood leaders, city planners, battle at hearing. I don't know who these guys are, but I'm assuming they're all the council members, and a bunch of old white guys running the show. So yeah, pictures of from that day, 1949. Yeah, just a really striking image. Today, there's no discussion today about the Humboldt underpass in the Chambers, and there will be no meeting either. The Common Council will just get in line and not say anything. So yeah, here's the concentrated Parle. So that was kind of an overview of just my research. So Crystal People Stokes, if we weren't here 15 years ago, why weren't you in the 1950s advocating for the highway not being built? I guess is my rebuttal, because it was a ridiculous statement. And so let's see the next segment. Let's see if I can pull up. So I want to do a quick reading on a quick audit of Taro Tsujimoto. So I got this book from the library, Taro Lives, The Confessions of the Sabres Hoaxster. So this is a book by Paul Wieland. And he is notoriously known as the guy who invented Taro Tsujimoto. And who's Taro Tsujimoto, you may ask? Taro Tsujimoto is was a fake draft pick by the Sabres. So in 1974, the Buffalo Sabres, their scouts and Paul Wieland was really upset with the draft process. At that time, it was all done by telephone, so it was long. So they did a prank, and they drafted the first Japanese player in NHL history by the name of Taro Tsujimoto. And it wasn't until later that they found out that, Taro Tsujimoto doesn't exist. So I got his book from the library, Taro Lives. So I want to do a little bit of a reading of his take of how Taro Tsujimoto was created. So I'm going to be reading right from his book. So he says, "What about Taro Tsujimoto, the man who never was, who started me on my sports hoax journey?" So he's read so many faulty versions of the hoax over the year that made me laugh. And they're mostly wrong. I don't know. There were only 4 of us in the room when Taro was born. Punch Imlach, Sabres coach Floyd Smith, scouting director John Anderson, and myself. Punch and John are dead. Smith and I are very old. Let's get it from my mouth and keyboard. The jackass who brought Taro to life. So he goes on in this book and basically tells the story of how Taro Tsujimoto was created. So at this point in time, the NHL and the WHA, so the World Hockey Association, the World Hockey Association was like a competitor to the NHL. So the 1974 draft was like done in secret because they didn't want the WHI knowing who the NHL drafted. So the draft went like as long as possible. So let's see. So at this point in the second day of the draft, the Sabres brass were all kind of pissed off because it was just very monotonous. So the commissioner would go make a call and then repeat, every draft pick to the 13 times in the call. So he says, "What the hell can we do to piss off Campbell?" said Imlach. John said, "We should draft somebody nobody knows about. That will get all the other GMs. They'll be scrambling to find the player on their draft eligible list." That's when I piped in. "We should draft someone who doesn't even exist. Just make up a name from someplace that no one would expect. Like Japan, for example," I said. Now, at the time, there was hockey being played in Japan, and still is, but it wasn't of a level where players were known outside their hometowns on the northern island of Hokkaido, where there's snow and ice in the winter. "Japanese," Imlach said? "What the hell? Why not?" I quickly remembered a Japanese name from my college days. Every weekend, driving back and forth to my college campus, I'd pass an Oriental store called Tsujimoto Garden and Gifts. Eureka! I had a last name for the player. John Anderson, Danish by birth, thus nowhere near Japan, said his first name should be Taro. John said that was a common Japanese name. If he was a player, we have to flesh out a hockey identity. And I jumped in again. How about he's a center, say 5'10", 175 pounds. A call to the Tsujimoto store reached the Mr. Tsujimoto, and he confirmed katana is a sword or saber, plus Taro is a common Japanese name. I was ready to flesh out Taro for Imlach's draft pick when the time came. In a few minutes, the NHL Connected's phone rang, and league boss Campbell was on the line. "George Imlach here," said Punch. Then we sat patiently while Campbell listed the 13 picks since our last turn. Campbell was as boring as any lawyer could be during the reading of a will. Punch nervously fingered the papers before, and when Campbell said, "Your selection, Buffalo?" Punch replied, "The Sabres draft from the Tokyo Katanas, Taro Tsujimoto, center." Campbell asked for a spelling, which Punch patiently gave him. We knew Campbell would have to spell the full name 13 times more, one for each NHL general manager on the phone, and we laughed aloud just thinking about it. I came up with some stats from Taro for the news release I'd be issuing later that day. Taro Tsujimoto, Tokyo Katana, center, 5'10", 175 pounds, shoots left, had 15 goals and 10 assists. So they, essentially made up this fake player and then just kind of ran with it. And let's see if I can pull up the an image from this book. So be patient with me. So even fans he became a folk hero. So this is the Phantom Sign Makers. They hung this, they would hang signs up from the auditorium from kind of the area. So this one says, Taro figures Punch was tired of being hustled to death. So the Phantom Sign Makers were a group of guys that would be up here and they made signs for every game. And Taro says, they'd had lots of punny words that would say, Taro says something. Taro says the economy is not real. Taro says money printer go burr. Really any sort of punny thing they would say. So, and also when games would get out of hand, the Phantom Sign Makers would lead a chant in the auditorium of just, we want Taro. So kind of a folk hero. So this is a bumper sticker. It says Taro says, and the Taro bumper sticker says in Japanese, think Stanley Cup. So that's kind of the quick overview of Taro. He's a local legend. And that's kind of the story from the source himself, Paul Wieland. So let me see if I can pull up another picture. So, and here's just a picture from the draft. So the NHL picked a record 247 players. So this draft, essentially there was no end. So it went as long as people, as long as you could make picks. So it was just a very, laborious draft on that day. And that led to the myth of Taro Tsujimoto. Okay, so the next segment, let's jump into, obviously Valentine's is tomorrow. So I wanted to do just a reading of a Grateful Dead song that's kind of in the Valentine's theme. So I'm going to do a reading of Peggy-O. So let's just pull up some images here. So this is the book I have. I did Franklin's Tower last week. So I have it here. This is the Grateful Dead, complete annotated Grateful Dead lyrics. So I'm going to read through the lyrics first of Peggy-O. Let's see if I can pull up the lyrics while I read it. So this was the writer of the annotated bibliography. So, I mean, people in the band, said, this book is great. Now I'll never have to explain myself. So that was Bob Weir. Just a very detailed book made by this deadhead who is the author. His name is David Dodd. So let's find the Peggy-O. So the lyrics go, as we rode out to Fenario, our captain fell in love with a lady like a dove, and he called her by name, pretty Peggy-O. So it starts with Fenario. So we rode out to Fenario. So what is Fenario? So this book, let's see if I can read that. It says, often called Fenario, this song has a very long lineage. According to Joan Baez's Songuk, Joan recorded on her 1962 LP. Cecil Sharp discovered several versions of this ballad in the southern Appalachias on his collecting trips during the First World War. Though it seems to have disappeared from American tradition since that time, it is still extremely popular in Scotland as the Bonnie Lass o' Fivio and was earlier known in England as Pretty Peggy of Derby. There are precedents for calling the tune Peggy-O. However, Simon and Garfunkel recorded under that title. Bob Dylan's first album calls it Pretty Peggy-O, and one of the most respected volumes of folk song lyrics, the Folks Singer's Word Book by Irwin and Fred Sober, lists the song as Peggy-O. Let's see if I can zoom out. So this scenario, and it has then a note here of to see the dire wolf. So this scenario, so here's the annotation for dire wolf. So it goes into more depth of scenario. So mentioned in the folk song, the Bonnie Lass of Fenario, variously titled Peggy-O, Fenario, the Bonnie Lass of Fivio, Pretty Peggy-O, Pretty Peggy of Derby. The relevant line is, as we march down to Fenario, which in turn is spelled variously as Fernario, Fenario, Fenario, Fenario. The question becomes, is this really a place? So you've seen the question posed and debated, usually facetiously on many Grateful Dead conferences and email exchanges, but no one has come up yet with anything approaching a definitive answer. So in the absence of the definitive, I'm going to go out on a limb and propose a theoretical answer. This answer lies within the realm of folk etymology. Since I am not trained etymologist, Fenario seems related to the word fen, defined in the Oxford English Dictionary as lowland, covered wholly or partially with shallow water, or subject to frequent inundations. A tract of such land, a marsh, especially the fens. Certainly low-lying districts in Cambridgeshire, Lincolnshire, and some adjoining counties. So combining this root with the suffix aereo can indicate in the general vicinity, area of the fens. Hunter uses the word fens in another lyric, which seems to lend support to the identification of Fenario as a district of marshy lands, namely in the Ivory Wheels Rosewood track, lyric of the Terrapin Suite as performed by Hunter himself. So the demon's daughter used to lay for gin in a shack way back on the skirts of the fens of Terrapin. And marshes appear elsewhere in Hunter's lyrics as well. The Mangrove Valley in Marsh's King's Daughter of Mountains of the Moon. So Hunter's Fenario is a rural, wooded, marshy region of the imagination, which bears no particular relation to the actual geographic Fenario referred to in the Peggy-O folk song, lyric in its variants. Child in his English and Scottish popular ballads places the Peggy ballads within the tradition of ballads gathered under number 299, Trooper and Maid. Sharp in his English folk songs from the Southern Appalachians names the collection of tunes gathered under number 95, Pretty Peggy-O. David Gans interviewed Alan Trist on KPFA in June 1990, and the following exchange took place. Let's see if we can find that exchange. Gans, maybe you can tell us if there's a place called Fenario, and if so, where and what? Well, David, I was able to find the answer to that question. If you're a songwriter and you need a word, you might refer to Alan Lomax's Song Archivist. And there he suggests that Fenario is a perfect place name. If you need a generic name for an indeterminate place because it has 4 syllables, fen, ner, re, o. If you need a 3-syllable place name, you might use Fivio. So Fenario is a place in the imagination, the symbolic imagination perhaps. Gans, I was hoping there was some history to it. You were hoping it was a real place that has a lot attached to it. Well, I think you can attach those things to it yourself. It's a very evocative name. So yeah, essentially Fenario isn't a real place, but it lives in, the imagination. And I found, I have this Irish folk song book. So here's an actual lyric of Maid of Fifio. So usually in a love song about a soldier and a young girl, it is the girl who comes off the worst. In this song, the soldier dies. So this song says, there once was a troop of Irish dragoons came marching down through Fifio, and the captain fell in love with a very bonny lass, and her name, it was called Pretty Peggy-O. So you can see, obviously, the roots of the Grateful Dead's Peggy-O song are in this Irish folk song, and I think, the whole soldier going to war, falling in love with somebody either at war or someone at home, I think is very common in the Irish folk tradition. So yeah, this Peggy-O has its roots in the Irish. So yeah, that was a reading on Peggy-O. I think that's all. I think if that's it, I'm gonna play some songs. So the first time the first performance was December 10th, 1973 at the Charlotte Coliseum in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'll put a link when I post this on video. I'll put a link on the page, but let's give a quick listen to the first iteration of Peggy-O in 1973. If I can pull that up. So yeah, here's the 1973 Peggy-O.
As we rode out to Venerio, as we rode out to Venerio, our captain fell in love with a lady like a dove, and he called her by name, Pretty Peggy-O.
Have a safe and sane fourth, folks.
Come stepping down the stairs, Pretty Peggy-O. Come stepping down the stairs, Pretty Peggy-O. Stepping down the stairs, combing back your yellow prettiest lady in the area.
So that was a very good version. I'm not as familiar with the older stuff, but that was the first appearance in 1973. And you can hear very folksy. It feels very folksy, especially compared to later versions. So let's skip ahead. This is 1977. So this is in Buffalo, live at the Memorial Auditorium. So I think I'd mentioned on my YouTube page, Metachewy, I've been uploading songs. But here's the Grateful Dead Peggy-O versions from 4 years later, 1977. So you hear a little bit of a difference. that was the 1977 version. I don't think I mentioned that. Yeah, essentially the song is about Peggy-O, who we covered, and then William O is the soldier. So that was 1977. So you can hear a little bit of the sound changing, and then let's jump ahead to 1994, to the 1994 version.
What would your mama think, pretty Peggy-O? What would your mama think if she heard my kiddies play? Some marching at the head of my soldier's oath.
So that was the 1994 show in Las Vegas. You can hear how the same song just changed over the years. And the Grateful Dead's website, they said it was a ballad regularly played by Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead from the early 70s. So earlier versions had the Free All the People, not Free All the Ladies. So this was just a very popular song of the Dead throughout their whole kind of existence, especially Jerry, loved a good love song or a good, sad song too. So then on the Reddit community, what is the greatest performance of Peggy-O ever performed? So this was a discussion on the Reddit. So people said anything from 1977, which is the Buffalo show, was prime Peggy-O territory. We have the April 16th, 1978 show. And then, somebody actually recommended, the Vegas show 97. Someone says the Peggy-O from April 30th, 1977 at Palladium in New York. The April 78 version. Someone said September 3rd, 1977 in Englishtown. There's lots of different versions. There's really no scientific consensus, but I'm probably impartial to the Buffalo version just because I'm from Buffalo, and it's one of my favorite songs. So that was an audit of Peggy-O. So thank you for tuning in to the Muckraker Punk podcast, and until next time, thank you.